governors, honoured guests, parents, staff and friends, good morning. 4,555 days ago, my time at Langley began. And if there's one thing that time has taught me, it is that it always runs out eventually. But rather than being sad that it's almost over, I'm so thrilled that it happened. We must ask ourselves, what is it that drives us, compels us to better ourselves, forces us to push our limits further than we ever anticipated them to reach? Because each of us have an entirely personal, utterly individual, and often uncontrollable catalyst, which causes us to become the people we shall be in 20, 30 years' time. Regardless of whatever your motivation is, these people, these walls and these values root, hone and cultivate the shaping and development of us all as we carve our futures as Langley students. It seems so odd that I arrived at Langley an extremely timid version of myself. Waving Mum goodbye from the school minibus left us both teary-eyed and prompted the bus driver to ask if I were a weekly or termly boarder. As she delivered me home that night, it became abundantly clear, much to my embarrassment, that I in fact was a day student. Eventually, I began to grasp the key to a successful and fulfilling Langley experience: opportunity, not only to react to them, but to proactively search for them. Time seemed to be going faster and faster, and I no longer felt quite the same surge of nausea as it struck 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. The doors Langley leaves ajar for us all, I was beginning to push open. I was bandaging up the poor Year Sixes in Mr. Felton's nationally successful first aid team, firing a rifle with the CCF in Wales, strapped to a military rib with the Royal Navy in Plymouth, representing a delegation for the Modern United Nations Conference and captaining the hockey first team. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that the decision we had taken as a family to send me to Langley was certainly the right one. As a family, we are so thrilled to see so many of our relatives and family friends too deriving the same enjoyment from a Langley education. If I had £1 for every dinner party that has ended with Dad lecturing an innocent guest on the benefits of Langley, I could pay for the swinkle myself. Our loyalty to Langley is simple. You don't need to be a brain box, nor do you need to be the next budding professional sports player. Quite simply, you must aspire to achieve your academic potential, take pride in your status as a Langley student, and attack each challenge and opportunity that this presents with enthusiasm and ambition. The staff at Langley are what enables us to maintain such a tangible family atmosphere. Looking back, I find it remarkable that Miss Wolsey remained as calm as she did, considering there were many attempts to sieve raisins and the electric scales would frequently be hurled into the dishwashers. Watching such antics unfold is Mr. Felton. Peering out from his well-positioned classroom, you can be sure to look up to a ready smile. Whether he's armed with a curling stone or still fighting his way out of a sling, it's a great sense of reassurance to know that he could not be more willing to avail himself to the education and well-being of us all. For me, some of the most rewarding and funny moments unravelled in the wonderfully enthusiastic, caring and slightly crazy language department that Mr. Batcher has to try to control. Their patience and perseverance is truly admirable. Miss Elwood's organisation of the French exchanges, finding us a valuable work experience, with Mike's persistent encouragement that we will speak French the entire time, made for some excellent memories, and still, neither were fazed as we slipped Mike's handbrake off awaiting our ferry and watched his car gain pace, rolling towards the port with Mike frantically chasing behind, and still not one cry, shout or expletive, in English anyhow. Having studied English at A-level, I've had the pleasure of some wonderful teachers. With English comes the ties of coursework, which without Mr. Wood would have been far more challenging. His tireless commitment to us all is hugely commendable. Mrs. Cossey, not only my English teacher for the past 6 years, but a wonderful form tutor, interested and loyal to us all. One-on-one sessions with Mr. Walker and Dr. Day certainly meant there was no room to hide in the classroom. I will never forget their care for me, the hug of advice they offered me, and an overwhelming sense of belief they've instilled in me. Dr. Day, your ability to listen and observe, and your capacity to advise and remember is one that I've never come across, and I am so very grateful. Mr. Kenton and Mrs. McRobert, the parental figures of the Olsen Centre. Whether we need advice, support, or even a spare pair of tights, Mr. Kempton's always there for us. The hours, effort and thought you both pump into sixth form life at Langley is unbelievable. Knowing you are always around provides each of us with vital support over 2 very challenging years. Sat in Mr. Finley's office over a year ago and hearing the news that myself and my closest friend were to be the next 2 heads of school left me overwhelmed. How could my final year at Langley have panned out this well? And yet it has done, and much like us all, the school has undergone a transformation that makes it in many lights unrecognisable. For that we have you, Mr. Finley, and the governors to thank, for it is your vision that has driven the school into the direction it stands so firmly and proudly today. Eleanor, where do I begin? Maybe during a CCF camp at Stanton, where we were buddied up and thrown under a basher to sit out the rain for a few hours. On the surface, this had all the hallmarks of a pretty dull time ahead. I couldn't have been more wrong. After just 5 minutes, Mr. Cooper yelled at us to stop laughing. If there was an enemy, we were dead. It feels as though we have never stopped. With the support of robust Headmasters' Council, we formed a representative school council, delivered conferences to the student body, and travelled to Auschwitz, relaying our experience to students, governors, and press in the chapel. However, none of this would have meant to me what it has done without you by my side. To share this role with my best friend couldn't have been a better way to end an excellent education. You are the most considerate, caring, and just person I know, a brilliant influence on me. Both myself and my parents thank you and your family for all that you have shared and offered me, and I am certain you'll be a friend for life. Ultimately, without my parents, I wouldn't have had the strength or the belief to have become a head of school. I thank you for your tireless words of advice and putting up with me repeatedly rehearsing speeches on holiday or asking you to proofread an email at midnight. Never once have you lost your faith in me, and your sacrifice to give me such a wonderful education I will never forget. The end is near, and it is tinged with a degree of sadness, yet fueled with excitement. How lucky am I to have something that makes saying goodbye so very hard. It seems our lives are changing, and when Langley has always been the constant, change isn't as noticeable. Now, Langley is ending for me, and so are the days of the 3 of us living together. Yet I'm certain, had I not experienced a Langley education, I wouldn't be as prepared, collected, and excited to tackle and to launch into the challenges and opportunities that await me in my future. I leave with a support system embedded around me that I know I can rely on, trust, and ask for advice at any stage of my life. I leave with a remark made by Churchill: success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. Thank you.